Why parents should not hit their children. Let's break generational curses. This is actually methods to learn to give children consequences versus hitting a child. You have a better understanding on how to deal with children and how to incorporate consequences for the child accordingly. Why hit a child? There's other forms of consequences. How were you brought up? Well, for me, I definitely incorporated beatings, whether it be for misbehavior or not being good at school or just not following directions. Beatings were definitely incorporated in my household. You get your pants pulled down and you get a belt to the bottom. I've also incorporated giving beatings. I'm a parent myself, and I've given beatings for consequences. However, I have been trying to break generational curses by incorporating other consequences. One of the main consequences, and so about three main points and three main alternatives to use for consequences. One of them being, this particular one is giving you the opportunity or giving the child the opportunity punishment. A lot of times parents do not use punishment. Punishment can be anywhere from 5 minutes where a child has to sit down and separate themselves from others, or as long as 2 months when you're thinking of in reference to like a teenager. If they've done something, oh, you're on punishment for 2 months, you can't go anywhere, can't do anything. Well, of course, in regards to now with quarantine, it really wouldn't have any effect on anyone, but punishment typically would be in results to 5 minutes, depending on the child, or all the way up to 2 to 3 months. Also, that is definitely a good way to get away from not beating the child. During the punishment, the child has an opportunity to think about what they have done versus a beating. It's 5 minutes or 10 minutes and it's finished, and you're like, the child is probably thinking what happened. So the punishment gives them a little bit more time to digest what they have done and why they're taking that time out to reflect on their behavior. Another great consequence, as far as punishment, would be having a child to reiterate and write down what they have done. If they misbehaved, I will not misbehave anymore, or I will not hit my fellow classmates, or I will follow directions. If a child rates that 100 times, by the end of that writing, they are going to get the concept of what they should not do, at least for that moment. They're going to think about it. Also, when we think about in regards to punishment, we want to think of giving this particular child the opportunity to incorporate this particular punishment versus the beating. Okay. During the punishment, it can result to being physical with a child. Example, you can have this child do push-ups, sit-ups. That's a physical punishment. Once again, instead of actually harming the child, you're making them be physically active. And based on the findings and researching of humans 2013 by the Moraine Rowe, 31 countries have made it illegal to hit their children. I find that pretty interesting, being that America has not made it illegal to do corporal punishment. Of course, if you harm your child, you will be held accountable, but there's a thin line between abuse and actually beating. So that's the thin line that you never know when they crossed it. So the fact that they have taken the initiative, these 31 countries, including some of them being African nations, New Zealand, and Sweden, they have taken it into their own hands to stop corporal punishment for children. I think that's pretty awesome. And according to the World News 2019, Scotland, one of the first UK countries, have banned corporal punishment as well. So I think that's pretty awesome. And we have pretty much just some countries stepping up here And they stated, hey, we're going to have laws to put in place to decrease physical abuse. I feel like that is awesome. And as far as a method two that adults can use, you can simply participate or have them not participate in activities that they like. That is always helpful. Say, for instance, a child celebrates holidays. You could say, hey, the Easter Bunny's not going to come see you if you're not doing well. Those are ways that parents can use against their children to, once again, harm the child, but not physically harm the child, or take away a special snack from them. Maybe their birthday, you know that they're going to want a special chocolate cake. Well, if you're not good, sweetie, you're not going to be able to get that special chocolate cake that you want. And if they do not behave, do not give them the special cake. You really have to put your foot down when it comes to the consequences that we incorporate for the children, or they won't even be effective. So it's very important that if you say something, you actually stick to it. And if a child gets old enough, they want to go on field trips like with the school, that is something they would not be able to do, or even maybe a family trip. If they're not being behaved, they will not be able to participate in those particular activities. And typically that harms a child when they're not able to be involved. For instance, I have children myself, as I mentioned, and I took my children to SeaWorld a few years ago. My son, which is my oldest son, who's now 11, but at the time was 9, he was not behaving at school. So he was not able to participate in that SeaWorld trip, although he came to Florida. He was able to stay at the resort, see the nice palm trees, but he was not able to go into SeaWorld and participate because of his behavior. Those are things that he's going to remember for the rest of his life. Like, oh, I was not able to participate in the SeaWorld activity because of my behavior. Teachers do it all the time at schools. If children they're misbehaving, they do not participate in the field trips. The teacher may have special surprises for the children, such as ice cream for them on Fridays if they're well behaved. So these are actual something that could be taken away if they're not doing well. There could be a birthday party that they're going to, they was invited to. Anything that they was invited to from a friend, they can't participate if they're not behaving. Lastly, there are multiple opportunities that a child can actually use to teach them a lesson. There are many rewards. That's the third thing that you would want to use is rewards for children if they do have good behavior. And these rewards can be unexpected rewards. You never want children to behave just to receive something. So for instance, if you notice that a child has behaved well all week long, maybe you want to give them a lollipop. Maybe you want to give them $5 just because of the good behavior that they have shown you. You never want them to work for that particular item because you don't want them to always expect something for good behavior, because good behavior is rewarded as a natural consequence for yourself as a person just by being nice to people. Hopefully they'll be nice to you. That's what you're wanting to get back. Alternatives to beating a child. So I'm going to reiterate a few here. You could definitely have a conversation with a child. Lectures are always painful. If you sit and talk to a child for over an hour, I'm sure their brain is going to be ready to explode because they don't want to hear what you have to say to them. That is a form of punishment without actually having to physically harm them. Remove all technology devices. So take away their toys, take away the technology devices. Punishment. Place them on punishment, whether it be 5 minutes or a week. Let them know why they're being placed on punishment. Let them know what they have done is unacceptable. Time out. This particular punishment have been actually recommended through the verywellfamily.com. They suggest that timeout has worked out for children. Also, they want to teach children new skills. Maybe redirect that child and say, hey, instead of hitting your friend, how about you ask them for the toy next time? So that's redirecting the child. Also, give the children rewards. That seems to work out over everything. When children are rewarded for good behavior, they continue to want to be good. Results from beating a child becomes physically aggressive if they continue to get beat. they're going to continue to show that aggressive behavior to others. So it's very important that we try to incorporate other consequences. The child will begin to fear the individual that they're being beat from. And you never want the child to fear the parent, because you want them to trust the parent or the guardian that's taking care of them. According to the Wild Parenting, it also causes self-esteem issues. The wildparenting.com website lets you know of how the child becomes very hurt inside and how they just tend to not begin to like themselves because they are being beat. So these are the things that we need to think about when we're thinking about beating our child. Let's think of other consequences. What can we do differently to better ourselves and better us as adults to become great examples of what to do? I hope this pretty much works for everyone. Thank you for your time.